What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So ever since we got the truck mostly done, there's a few things we still need to do to it, but ever since we finished it, basically I keep getting the question, what is the next build? So I'm about to show you. I picked up another truck. We're gonna start working on it today, and it's not the prettiest thing in the world, but I got a good deal in it. I could not pass it up, so here it is. I know what you guys are thinking, dude, that's the same exact truck you just built. I know, but bear with me. So the red truck was kind of a, not necessarily unlimited budget, but I just kind of went all out on it. Wasn't too worried about the price of parts and everything I was doing to it. But this truck is a different story. So I even got a lot of comments saying you need to make your builds more kind of budget friendly. Obviously, a lot of people don't have 20, 30 grand to dump into a freaking 90 Toyota pickup. So that's kind of unrealistic. So this truck, we're not going to be doing all the high dollar top end parts and custom fab work and all that kind of stuff on it. We're just going to kind of go bare bones and clean it up, get it running, driving good, and see what we can do with it. So here's the motor, guys. This is a 3.4 out of a 2000, I believe, Toyota Tacoma. It's a V6, obviously. I'm sure most of you guys know what that is. So the story on this, the guy put the motor in the truck and got it running, and he said it's just dumping fuel out the exhaust, just running extremely rich. He put new injectors in it, didn't fix it, so he kind of just gave up. It's mostly complete, needs a few things. Radiator needs to be replaced. Wiring is just kind of scattered all over the place, and a lot of it's not even hooked up to anything. He actually bought a conversion harness, which is nice, so that aspect of the wiring should be good. We just got to tidy up all the other little things. So the body is not in the best shape. It's not terrible. This side's better than the other. It's obviously been repainted, paint's fallen off. Come over on this side, I'll show you. At one point this thing was laid on its side. It's got a big dent up there, and this door, just kind of right in the center of the door, the cab's kind of pushed in, so we're gonna have to fix that. But the rest of the body isn't in terrible shape. There's the inside, no carpet. Seats are okay. Just needs a nice good cleaning. Needs some a few parts, steering column cover, a little heater, HVAC cover, a carpet kit. But other than that, it's not super terrible. So this thing does have a 3-inch body lift, which is needed for this motor because it's a lot taller. So you can either do a body lift or cut a big hole in the hood and put some sort of a hood scoop on it. But this guy decided to do the body lift. So that's already done. The motor's here, is bolted in, tranny's bolted in. Everything's mostly here. So I want to get this thing fired up today and see what it's actually running like, and see if we can get it running better, and just go through it, tidy it up, and see what we can do with this truck. So the first thing we got to do is get the tire pumped up. I want to get it pressure washed, clean the crap out of it. Before I even bring it in the shop, I'm going to wash it. And I just hate working on dirty stuff. Alright guys, got the truck pressure washed up, cleaned up okay. This paint is so terrible, but nonetheless, got her washed up. So just going through and kind of looking at this thing, I noticed that vacuum line was unplugged. That one's going to nothing. This one's got a big hole in it. And a few other weird things. So I need to find a vacuum diagram and kind of go through, make sure everything's hooked up somewhat correctly, and obviously you can't have vacuum leaks everywhere. So we're gonna do that, probably plug this one. I know some of these manifolds don't even have this port, so I'm not even sure what that's for. And then we'll plug that one, replace that, and just kind of go through and make sure everything's hooked up right. And then I'll find a battery, throw it in, and we'll see if this thing even turns over. Alright guys, I got most of this vacuum figured out. So this one should run to here, which is actually the fuel pressure regulator, and it was looped up to here. I'm not sure if the difference in vacuum between here and here would change how that vacuum line reacts for that fuel pressure regulator, but I figured I'd do it how it's supposed to go. So I think the biggest problem we have right now is we don't have any of the purge VSV solenoids. So there's 3 solenoids, and then that's all the wiring for it, and then the canister that goes back to the tank. I'm not sure, I'm not real familiar with this motor. I've never really screwed with them, so I really don't know if missing all those is going to make it run weird, but we will have to find those solenoids and the canister. I might run the stock 3.0 canister since it bolts up right over here and looks factory, but let's see if we can get a battery in this thing, see if I'll turn over and fire up at least. Alright boys, battery's in. Vacuum line should be good enough for now. Everything that I'm not hooked up yet is plugged, so we shouldn't have any major vacuum leaks. So let's crank this thing over and see if it'll fire. Well, the guy wasn't lying. This thing sure runs rich. So I kind of wiped it up. There was some puddles of fuel coming out the exhaust and just smoking out the whole neighborhood. So something's going on. I feel like something's tricking the computer into just overfueling, because he put new injectors in it and all the vacuum lines seem good. So with this conversion harness, I have an OBD port, but I cannot get my reader to read. It won't connect to the computer for some reason, so I can't even check what codes it's throwing. The check engine light is flashing, so it's definitely storing some codes, but I can't read them. So it's kind of a shot in the dark until I can figure out how to actually read the codes with a code reader. Alright guys, so this thing has a little oil leak, and it was dripping on the ground, and I smelt it, and it smelled like fuel, so I drained the oil, and this is full of fuel. It is very thin, stinks like fuel. So somehow this thing is running extremely rich, like rich enough to where fuel is making it into the oil. So I really don't know what's going on. I've never had anything like this where it overfuels so much. I mean, on a carbureted engine I could picture it, but on a fuel injected engine I've never ran into this issue. Alright guys, one more thing I'm going to do real quick, just to make sure this motor is worth trying to work on. I'm going to check compression, so I'm going to run around and see what we got for compression. I just dumped some oil in the cylinders just to make sure we have lubrication, because obviously we just drained the oil, but I'm barely turning it over, so it should be just fine. All right, went around and checked all 6 cylinders, and we're about 180 on each cylinder, so compression is good. So we just got to figure out what is dumping so much fuel into this thing. The only thing I've seen online in my research is it could be a bad computer, or I guess it could be wired wrong, but he bought the whole conversion harness from Toy Only Swaps, I believe. So that should be wired right. So I don't know, it could be the computer. I'm gonna go through the wiring a little bit more and see if I can figure anything out. If not, I guess we might have to try a new computer. All right guys, so I called Toy Only Swaps and Off-Road Solutions. They both do these swaps every single day, and they're pretty familiar with them, and they both agree that they think my ECU is bad. So there's a few things that kind of point towards the ECU. One being obviously way too much fuel. 2 being I can't connect a code reader to it. And 3, the fuel pump runs constantly. The way they wired this fuel pump through this harness is through like the factory relay and everything, and the factory circuit opening relay for the fuel pump. But it's supposed to only run when you crank it. But when I turn the ignition on, it constantly runs and never shuts off. So somehow the ECU controls that as well, and it's not functioning correctly. So I actually went to the wrecking yard this morning, picked up a new ECU. So we're gonna swap that in right now, see if that changes anything at all. And we kind of went over the wiring while I was on the phone with them, and everything seems to be wired correctly. So unless there's something really, really strange with the wiring going on, he said I could send that harness back to him and he'd check it out. But I'm gonna try the ECU first and see if that changes anything at all. All right guys, ECU is plugged in. So I'm going to see if I can connect my code reader before I start. But first I wanna see if that fuel pump issue is fixed. So let's turn the ignition on. It's quiet guys, so before you could hear it running constantly, now it is off and everything is plugged in. Still got the relay up there, so we are good to go there. That's a good sign. So let's plug this code reader in and see if we can connect to the ECU at all. Look at that guys, we are in to the ECU, so that is a very, very good sign. All right boys, let's see if she fires up. All right boys, she starts and runs, and I've ran it for like, I don't know, a minute maybe, and there's still no codes popping up. So I'm not sure how long you have to actually run this thing before it'll throw the codes. I know there's issues and codes that should be on the ECU, just don't know how long we got to run it. So this thing is probably just so fouled out with fuel that it may just need a little bit of time to run. I know it sounds kind of stupid, but I think like the more I run it, the better it runs. So I'm just gonna go back and forth, start it up, and there's just so much fuel. As soon as I start getting warm, the whole exhaust starts smoking. I really don't want to start a fire, so I'm not trying to get it too hot right now. So I'm just letting it run for a little bit and then let it cool off until I get all this fuel burnt out of everywhere. The entire motor is just full of fuel. So we got to burn all that out, and then we'll see how it runs. We'll see if we can get those codes to pop up and see what needs attention. Another thing we got to do is swap this radiator out for the old radiator from my truck. So this guy did some really neat modifications to that lower hose, and I'll show you when I pull the radiator out. But there's no coolant in it, so I want to get the radiator in, get a new hose for the bottom, and then we can get some water in it and see if that helps out at all, because I know those coolant temp sensors play into the ECU too, so we want to get some water in it. So this is what the guy did. He has a piece of, I don't know, exhaust pipe or something glued on. I guess the radiator's still fine. I may still use this one. But either way, we got to find a new radiator hose for the bottom and get some coolant in this thing. Alright, we got the radiator back in. I got a lower hose on it and I was going filling it up, and looks like the thermostat housing to the block is leaking. So now we got to pull that off. Trucks like this is just one step forward, about 3 steps back. So hopefully that's the only coolant leak we got. All right guys, got the housing off. Some people should just not work on cars. So there's 3 studs on the block, and this was in between the housing and the block like this on one of the studs. So obviously it's not going to seal. So we're going to get a new thermostat, a new O-ring, and without this in there, it should seal. All right guys, thermostat's here. So let's throw it in and hopefully this will cure the leak. Alright guys, back in business. No more leaks, so far anyway. So let's start this thing up, run it for a little while, see if we can get it to smooth out at all, and see if we can get any codes to pop up. Well guys, it's starting to run a little bit better, but still definitely has some sort of a miss. You can hear, and it's idling a lot higher than it should be too. So I just dumped some fresh fuel in it. That fuel is probably a couple years old, so we will let it run for a little bit, see if that fresh fuel does anything at all. So I think I found that problem with the high idle. So when I open the throttle and let it go, it still hangs up a little bit, like this cable isn't quite long enough, and you can see it's already adjusted all the way out. So I think I'm going to bend this bracket down just a little bit and see if that helps. So I bent that bracket and returns to the closed position, so we're good to go. All right, now she's idling a little bit low, so kind of weird. Probably has to do with this little misfire we got. So I think a set of plugs and wires may help. I'm gonna probably tomorrow go pick some up. We'll throw that on. But for now, I want to take this thing out and just let's go out in the backfield, mess around with it, see if the tranny works, see if the clutch works, see if everything else in the truck works. Well, it moves. There it is, guys. She's running, driving. I'm very glad we figured out that ECU was the problem so fast. ECU failures aren't that common. I've never actually seen one myself, so everything was kind of pointing towards it. So I took a guess and we lucked out. ECU fixed most of the problems. It's not overfueling anymore. We have no leaks, no dripping of fuel out the exhaust, or no fuel in the oil. So I'm really happy about that. Now we just got to fix this misfire. Like I said, I'm gonna do plugs and wires. Hopefully that'll fix it. If not, we'll keep digging. And if you guys are familiar with these swaps, the 3-4 swap, let me know on like all the purge VSV stuff. I'm pretty sure you need it. I'm not throwing a code for it. I am getting a P0300, I believe, random misfire code. That finally popped up, but that is the only code. I don't have a rear O2 sensor. I'm not getting a code for that. I have none of those VSVs. I'm not getting any codes for that either. So kind of strange. Maybe they just take longer to detect. I'm not sure. But either way, it's running, it's driving. So we're looking pretty good. So I'm gonna cut this video here. I hope you're excited about the new build. I'm excited to get this thing cleaned up, running, driving good, and we're building this together, guys. Give me ideas on what we should do to the truck. I want to obviously give it some sort of paint job. I haven't decided if I'm gonna do paint. Probably not paint. This body just needs way too much work to actually make it, you know, say like my red truck, make it nice. So I have thought about doing Rhino liner or the Raptor liner on the whole thing. I don't know what color. Obviously we got to fix this cab where it kind of got pushed in when it was laid on its side at one point. So I'll probably go through and fix a lot of the bigger dents, but all the small stuff I'm not too worried about. Like I said, I'm not making this truck like super nice like my red one. It's just gonna be clean it up, make it look good, make it presentable, running, driving good, and we'll see what we can do with that. So I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. Go drop a comment, let me know what you think, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.